Okay, bye-bye. Good afternoon, everybody. I am with you as well. I am Samia.
Hello, Samia.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. حال سامية شو أخبارك؟
يا مرحبا أبو أحمد الله يخليك.
It's 6 now. Shall we start?
Yes, Yasmin, we are just waiting members to join because we just opened the webinar.
Oh, okay.
So in a minute, we'll start.
Okay.
شوي عليهم ياسمين.
We start now, Shafiq?
Yeah, let's start.
The Executive Committee members of UAE Internal Auditors Association, ICI Abu Dhabi chapter, members of both the association, invited guests, good evening, everyone. I hope you all are keeping safe and doing well. I welcome you all to our joint event with UAE IAA. It is always desired to join hand with professional bodies to work together wherever possible. The chapter has organized a fast-track vaccination for the members and their families through Burj Al Hospital as well as Cleveland Clinic. Request all members to get vaccinated. At the moment, the request for Cleveland cannot be taken further, but Burj Al is still open. This is the only way I think everyone can keep safe, and we should support the UAE government initiative in this. And I request every member and their families to get vaccinated as soon as possible. We continue to embark on our journey of distant learning. When it comes to e-learning, content is very important, and the medium is technology. And today's event, we have a speaker on technology. The technology is impacting us as well as our profession in a dramatic way. Soon we will see that a role of accountant or auditors is going through a sea change, and we need to adapt to this new technological to excel in the profession. We are going through tough times due to pandemic. The chapter is assisting the less privileged by distributing iftar food packets during Ramadan. And we are pleased to announce that Abu Dhabi chapter has contributed INR 1 million to Chartered Accountant Benevolent Fund in India. I appeal each and everyone to keep doing the good work and help in whatever way you can. The chapter is trying to engage with each of its stakeholders, members, sponsors, and all well-wishers by doing webinars and professional events, webinars both in professional as well as social times. Since January, the chapter has done 10 PDC events, which is roughly 2 events each month, and 5 social events for our members. The managing committee is planned event technical session on analysis of India and US stock market. We are doing an event on VAT and ESR update. We also plan to do something on future role of accountants. I welcome you all to the virtual CPE meeting where Mr. Abdul Qadir Obaid Ali, Chairman of the Board of UAE, along with Mr. Yuri Misnik, Group CTO of FAB, will be addressing to our members. Please remain safe, remain healthy. Now I request Samia to take over the proceedings, please.
Thank you, Mr. Niraj. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of UAE Internal Auditors Association, I welcome you to this joint members meeting that is being held jointly between UAE Internal Auditors Association and the Institute of Chartered Accountants, International Abu Dhabi chapter. The first speaker this evening is going to be Mr. Abdul Qadir Obaid Ali. He is the chairman of UAE Internal Auditors Association Board of Governors. He is also Chief Executive Officer at Smart World, besides being an advisory board member at Ajman University and University of Dubai. He is also a board member at Al Noor Training Center for Children with Special Needs, besides being an independent board member of the Audit Committee at the Al Masraf Bank. This evening, Abdul Qadir will be focusing on disruptive technology, the way forward. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Abdul Qadir Obaid Ali.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And I really would like to first really thank the ICA Abu Dhabi chapter for their invitation, especially Niraj. Thank you very much for the invitation. The one thing I would like to start with is that, as I said, if anything we have learned out of this COVID pandemic is to make sure that we look after our health, particularly the health of your own family, your friends, and really in this, if anything happened, the whole world. We are all facing a challenge that, it's been a while since we've faced such a pandemic. However, out of bad news, there are always good news. And this is what I would like to talk about. Today, I would like to talk about the good thing out of this. Everybody takes negative things in the way they do it, but we always look on the other side, making sure that how we can actually get benefit out of this. And today, talking about finance, something is very close to my heart. Maybe a lot of people think because I'm the chairman of the UAE Internal Audit Association that I am a finance person. I wish I can say that, or I can claim that, or claim to be a chartered accountant, but I am not. I'm leaving that for the expert. I'm actually an engineer. But really, my career into audit, which has been in the last, really, I want to say in the last 15 years of my career, I've been with audit, it really showed me the importance of finance. But let me just try to ask a question, and I know this is really a one way at the moment. But if we look into a company and we say, which is the most important department that we think of today? And if I had the answer from all of you, possibly the majority will say the finance department. Am I right? And for a good reason. And let me actually answer it in a slightly different way. As the chairman of the IIA and more close to heart, as I am working as the CEO, and I see the different department, every single department is just as important. And we are one simple chain within an organization, and we are as strong as the weakest link that we have. However, having said that, I would like to reiterate and say that, finance, I'm the CEO of a company, and really my right hand is the CFO. Now, why I'm saying it, not because I'm actually giving a lecture, because especially during last year, when we were hit with one of the, really, the pandemic made us all think twice. One of the things is that everybody looks around and says, how long we can go on? Because most of us, by force, we were not able to actually, or we couldn't work. A lot of us were at home. And I really, looking at Sheikh Zayed Road, and people are passing through it and they can see it. You can see that whole road is actually, there's not a single car on it. Everybody's actually cocooned in their own home. For us, basically, when we are working, our revenue was almost close to zero. How a company can actually survive? Unless it has ample ways of doing it, it is very difficult. So the first person in the organization you have to turn to is the CFO, and sitting down with him or her and saying, okay, what do we need to do? Yes, a lot of people went and they looked into their cash flow. I mean, that's something is so important to every CEO as well as to every family member, because we are also a similar thing. Every home is a small company that looked into how they can survive during this pandemic. And cash flow was something very important, and what people do. Some people went and did so many things. Yes, even to the point that some people volunteered to take pay cut, because just to make sure the boat can survive during this hard time. And who do you really need? you really need finance, because I believe the finance is the backbone of every company. Whether through the ages when things were actually manually done, to right now, even now, you would see them now in the front end, advising the management on what to do. And I really believe in that, because I've gone through that transformation. And all of us, I doubt anyone that doesn't have something called a mobile in their hand today, or actually can do any kind of a job, can go outside their homes without taking their mobiles with them. I have to say that, I've seen people go to the bathroom with their mobile. And please don't do it, because it's been proven. If you're going to the bathroom for 3 or 5 minutes, if you take your mobile, you're going to stay at least, if not 15, half an hour in there. And that's not very healthy for you. Just take it from me. It's becoming something that possesses you. When I say phone is possessing you, it's actually technology that's actually possessing you. Today, when we say we cannot go outside without our phone, because it is your whole life is actually around your phone. Now, with this pandemic, if anything that we actually gained from it, it helped made everyone computer savvy. If you are not using Microsoft, a lot of people were not even using Microsoft Teams or any of those platforms that you can think of. Everybody within a week became an expert in using this technology, because I don't want to say we were forced, but it was the one solution that actually available to us, and it's readily available. And in the whole UAE, imagine you're going to school without going to school. You're still doing it actually online. What I really wanted to say is that the transformation hit us all at a different aspect. Coming back to us as finance, and I want to really take it on a positive side, whether we are finance or auditing. Did life stop? No, we were able to actually function. As a matter of fact, a lot of innovative solution came when you are not actually in the office, because today, as an important function, everything is actually being done online to different degrees. And one of the things I wanted to try to share with you is taking the journey of transformation is not a fun one. It's a very painful one. As they say, almost 70% of the transformation, especially in the area of finance, actually fail. And I am one of the victims, because I tried to do that in my own company, and I found a lot of resistance. When you want to go ahead and transform your finance function, what you really usually do, you go ahead and bring yourself a very good consultant. You select the package that you really want, and you say, let us look at the processes. You do a lot of work in that particular thing, but you miss one of the most important elements, and that is the change in the people that you really want them to try to adapt this. Because if you do find resistance, I would say, good luck, you will not be able to do it. And that's exactly what happened. People were resisting it. And unless you actually spend some time initially explaining the benefit of us taking and embracing this technology, change is not going to happen. And a lot of the time, we spend a lot of time and effort in bringing consultant, buying systems, but we ignore spending time on showing the benefit to the people who are actually using it, because a lot of people were afraid. What? I'm going to lose my job. Finance is going to lose their job. And it's absolutely not the case. On the positive side, after we have learned what we have done, today, the function of finance is slightly in a different dimension. Because today people in finance, especially the CFO, he's no longer looking at, trying to close the books. Yes, it is a function that needs to be done. But today, with the aid of technology, it is not difficult to do. Looking at your systems, because today, if you're talking about invoices, that can be sent online, that can be received online, that can be read online. Once you read all that, you can do your reconciliation and you can close your books. Not only that, you will not be doing it. IT will be doing it for you. You tell them what needs to be done, and IT will be doing that transformation, giving you the opportunity to be able to look into the business and become that commercial person that we are looking for. Aiding, whether if you're in a plant, aiding the production area, if you are in construction, aiding the team, how they can improve what they are actually doing. Having said that, I'm not saying it from a book or whatever, from experience that I've actually have seen and done. And what do you end up with? You end up with two main components, what we are all looking for: effectiveness and efficiency. That would drive eventually your cost down. I think if anything, this pandemic has actually showing us embracing technology is something we should not really see from a distance. We should actually go ahead and embrace it. But the leadership in an organization play a significant role to making sure that this change is in the benefit of every individual person, not only for finance, but in the whole company, to make sure it becomes a success. And this is what I really actually I have seen and I've felt. I think we have Yuri who's going to be talking about the banking. Today, I don't know, or I can't remember when was the last time I actually visited the bank. Honestly, I do not know. I can't remember. Everything I want to do it, I can do it online from mobile. Before you imagine you're actually sitting down and writing checks to trying to pay for all your bills. You're not doing that anymore. With a push of a button, you're being enabled to actually take care of what you really need. It takes me 1 hour in the beginning of the month. All bills are paid, finished. And if you really want to do it automatically, it is done automatically. I say, I take something called 2,000 dirham test. In the beginning of the month, I put 2,000 in my pocket and I see how long I can go with this 2,000 before I can spend it. And believe me, some months I don't spend 2,000. Everything you're doing now is online. Cash of something that actually people saying is going to disappear. Okay, not in the near future, but it's no longer there. Everything is done. One of the things I was really worried about is this petty cash in organization. Imagine, you're having a hard time. Every organization they have. Do you imagine how much time you do just to process this petty cash? That is no longer required. With being able to robotize that process, having a credit card giving to people, everything is actually done. There's no need to try to worry about it. You just ensure there is a set policy set for the people to use it in the organization, and everybody got to adhere with it, and then everything is actually done and done online. So I really feel it is the greatest opportunity for finance to try to make sure. And no finance department, if they are to be an elite finance department, can actually stand without adopting technology. Yes, technology has so many forms. And the company or the entity that actually hires a data science in their finance department, I really would salute that. Because at the end of the day, if you have a data science working, so you no longer need that finance in there, because if you have that data science, at the end, all the information that a CEO or management need is coming, I would say the majority of it is coming from finance, through the system of finance. So all that wealth of data that you have, coupled with a data sciences, can actually forecast what's happening in the company much better than anybody else. So this is what I really see the role of finance in this pandemic. Because I, as a CEO, I believe my CFO is my right hand, because along whatever we are actually making, whatever we are doing, we need to make sure that the ROI is there for it. And the best people who can help us and advise us are the finance people. So they no longer are busy doing the old-fashioned things they are busy with. They are actually in the field helping us forecast what we need to do. So they're becoming the real advisor that we are looking after them. Now, I've been talking for a while, and I didn't actually prepare any presentation, and that is the way I talk, because I believe a lot of people, you do a lot of presentation, but nobody looks after those presentations anyway. And if you have any questions, I know there's a chat box in there that you can actually, you through the chat, you can send any question, or I'll try to answer them before I actually move into slightly a different area. I want to try and touch base on one thing that I've experienced in trying a new technology. And I don't know, some of you may have heard or haven't heard about is blockchain. I know we cannot interact, and to a lot of people, blockchain is slightly, it has a different meaning. I think one of the best things that happened to us, if people wisely use the blockchain for whatever they really want to do, because it's a technology that if you want any kind of a security around what you are doing, if you want to secure content to make sure that this content, it could be a certificate, it could be a degree, it could be a movie, and you want to ensure that that content is actually intact without being touched with, you can definitely take that content and use the block technology. I'm not here to talk about, what is it, because we are not about this, but it is one of the technology, if used properly, can help eliminate a lot of the forgeries that we are trying to avoid. For example, I know that for a fact from some studies done that 25% of the degrees that actually people see or they go through are forged. The number is big. So how do you actually make sure that those degrees are genuine? Today, when you hire a person with a degree and you want to confirm that his or her degree is actually genuine, the requirement right now is that the person, if he is from outside from the UAE, must go and endorse his certificate, go to his home country, to the Ministry of Exterior, get a stamp that it is genuine, go to possibly the UAE embassy, get a stamp, and only come back, and it would take time and effort, a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, with an amount to be paid just to make sure that it is genuine. And when you get these degrees, are they really genuine? Because these stamps are there, it's been accepted. But the reality, we did not verify from the source whether the person has graduated from that university. So with blockchain technology, if the school is using it, And just look at that very simple example I'm going to give you. If the school is using it, the degree from that university can be published on the blockchain. And once it is published on the blockchain, it can be in the person's own wallet, because now e-wallet is something common to everybody. So you as an individual have that wallet of that degree with you. And if when needed by anybody, somebody where you are actually going to work, you can actually send that degree. The person, the employer can verify that this degree is genuine without having to go through all that shebang, because they can easily verify it from the source by just actually visiting their website and making sure that it's genuine. And easily can actually, it can be done. And this is something that it's not something science fiction. It's already been there and it's been actually proved to be there. So I'm saying we as auditors and finance can look into such technology and make use of it to make sure things can be done very safely. I think it is more challenging, not for the finance being from the other side, it's from the other side, because we also need to try to make sure that we can upskill ourselves to make sure we are in line with this technology and understand it. Because yes, it's a challenge for finance, because technology is one thing that's actually moving very fast. And whether we like it or not, this train is moving at a speed that's actually getting faster and faster. And if we in finance do not have the same speed, we're just going to be left out. And when we are lefting out, our organization is losing a lot, because we are no longer have that competitive edge that we need. I think you're going to hear a lot from Yuri about banking and how technology enhancing the banking. And I know the old-fashioned banking is moving away. Now we are talking about digital banking. Digital banking, which I know is going to be the future and is going to revamp. So you as a customer will be able to try and to not benefit, but get a lot of advantage and have more choice. And hopefully pay less charges as well. Okay. Now I know I've been talking, I said I'm going to be talking for half an hour. Okay. For about this. So I want to try to give, if anybody have a question, by all means, you can actually post your question so I can actually join it before I talk about slightly a different experience that I have actually had, and we can share that with the audience.
Ahmed, there is one question.
Totally.
There is one question in the chat.
What does it say? Okay, what does it?
Benefits of advanced technology are very clear. However, do you agree that this over-dependence on the technology is making humans dumb?
No, absolutely. I think I really I like the question, but I've been working with technology, especially right now. It's not making us dumb, no. It actually is making us, if you really use technology for how it is, you can manage your time so effectively. Can you imagine, you know, during this pandemic, a lot of the work has not stopped, continued. For example, did the bank stop? Yes, some businesses got affected very heavy. If you're in the airline, or if you're in the tourist business, yes, because of the external forces, yes, you've been hit. But a lot of the businesses moved because of the use of technology. Did that make us dumb? No, that made us more really aware of what's really happening. you use it for the right reason. I'm not saying that, you know, we should be afraid of it. We should embrace it because it will give us more ample time to do something else. Today, if you are actually making meetings with your own internal people, it's more effective to do it actually over Microsoft Teams or others, because it's so set. You know, you can actually do 5 or 6 meetings without actually moving from your place. Within your own colleagues, it has a lot of advantage because you've seen each other, you understand, you can move very quickly and you can get that one done. So it is definitely effective. However, yes, if you are in a sales business and you want to go and meet the customer, it doesn't give you the same thing. Technology will not give you the same, you know, because you are not seeing that customer, feeling him to understand the requirements. Similar thing, I feel bad for the people, the teachers who are teaching. It's not the same, like, you know, if we were meeting in a big room and we're seeing everybody, it's not the same vibe as when we're doing it through a screen. But at least you're getting benefit 50% of it, which is still better than zero. So I want to try to say, let's not look at it from a negative, always look at it from a positive side.
Mama, I need it. One question which says, do you think current process of remote working in some way compromising on data security of company? How to balance the current use of technology by keeping data?
I like that question because this is the #1 concern or risk to any organization. Security of data. A company without data cannot survive. So with respect to the cybersecurity, it is one of the biggest concern to individual. Can I just for a second? Anybody lost their phone? And how did you feel if you lost your phone? I would dare, I'm going back to the same thing. If you lost your phone, you lost your life because everything you have is in there. Unless you have a backup, you would not be yourself. As a matter of fact, because we're so used to it. So imagine, and I have this very simple example I use, you know, with a small laptop, you can sit down in a company's lounge, and you can actually enter the company if the company doesn't have proper cybersecurity, and you can actually take hostage of that company. You can actually kill that company. So I do believe that data and data security is very, very important. And that's why you see a lot of investment is going into making sure that they can secure the data. On this particular question, I would like to say that a lot of company, if they've got $100, they spend 95 in building the best fireworks and best in building the best infrastructure to secure their system. And if they spend $5 in educating their people, I would say that's normal. However, what we really need to try to do is to make sure that there is an understanding of a security culture within the organization. We need to make sure that the people working in the organization look at security and understand how important that is to them. I mean, being an auditor, I've been in different places where I just have to try to walk. And I walked into the chairman's office and I found the password written on the, I'm not kidding you, I've seen the password written on the screen. What is this? Oh, I forgot. This is my password. They're giving me, IT is giving me a password every 3 months and it's giving my life. So I'm just writing it because I forget. So I'm saying it's important to introduce a culture. I mean, till recently, guys, I mean, if you went to a gas station in the UAE, if you went to a gas station, till about maybe 6 months ago, they've actually taken some action. When you go and you put in gas, and I know there are ladies in there, but I'm gonna have to try to go on that side, especially the ladies, huh? The first one is my wife, and she did that while I'm sitting with her. You used to go to the gas station and you put gas, you pull gas in, and the person goes and says, well, okay. She said, just fill it up. You fill it up. The guy comes and okay, it's 160 dirhams. Okay, this is my credit card. Okay, password, ma'am. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not kidding you. And I'm sitting next to her. I said, what are you doing? I said, okay, I trust the guy. What do you mean you trust the guy? The UAE were one of the first countries in the world to mandate this new credit card that ensures that you have this special chip. So you have to have a number on it. In some other places they don't. They may say they made sure it is, but you can see sometimes this over trust is the worst enemy to people in the organization. And that's why I say it is very important to make sure, because you imagine you switch on your monitor in the morning and somebody telling you, you know what, if you want your data, you have to pay me this much in cryptocurrency. Pay me, otherwise I'm going to take you for a hijack. You wonder what happened to the CFO at that time. This is a fact. So this is also, yes, it is some of the effect, but while we are actually going through a transformation, we must ensure that the security of our system is there. Otherwise, honestly, anybody can take you for a ride. And loss of data is the most important thing to any organization. Thank you for that question. I hope I covered the answer to that. Anything else?
No, this is the only question that we have, Mr. Abdelkader.
Okay.
There is one question, Bu Ahmed. What is the future of cryptocurrencies? In the chat section.
I am not the expert in here. I am not going to answer something. I am not the expert, and I'm sorry. Cryptocurrency, it is there, and it is one of the means that's going to happen. We all know it. But I think if I want to pass this question, I'll pass it to Niraj. He might be able to answer, not me. I'm not going to be able to answer that because I'm not the expert in that field. My apologies, guys.
Sorry, I'll also not be able to answer that.
Okay. I'm being,
it is still an unknown territory, uncharted territory. I mean, so I apologize. I can't.
Yeah, because we know it is coming. It's one way of doing it with digital banking. Maybe Euro can actually cover that questions, because I know the central bank is seriously looking into it to make sure once the central bank adopts that, it's going to be, they are really looking into it to trying to make sure as an alternative. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to be helpful in that. We'll make that. I think Euro probably he has a better.
I'm happy to touch it. I'm happy to touch on it on the second sector. So we'll keep the intrigue on till 7:15.
Okay. I think I've come up to I've come to the end of my time. I hope I was not too heavy, guys, on you guys, and I'm sorry I didn't give you a presentation, but hopefully at least you took one item out of this presentation. But at the end, I'd like to really thank Niraj and his team for allowing us to join hand in putting this presentation, and I hope that you got something out of it. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having us with you. So nice of you. Thank you. Wish you a very good presentation with Mr. Yuri. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdelkader, for a wonderful talk. You didn't need a presentation, actually. You were talking from passion, your heart, and it was absolutely well received by, I think, all the attendees. You touched upon definitely the most important aspect of cybersecurity, which I think mostly as a finance professional, the CFOs are not very happy with spending money, too much money on that, because there is no return on that investment. But still now, as you rightly said, that CFO role has changed substantially and drastically over last decade. And we have seen that CFO is more aligned to the commercial aspect and running the business rather than just closing the books. So it is of great importance that how technology can be built into a system with proper securities. And thank you for all your comments and the message what you have given. It was a wonderful talk. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, a small appreciation from our side, certificate to you, and thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rohit Daima. I'm treasurer at ICI Abu Dhabi chapter. So we are moving on to the next session. And it is my privilege to introduce the next speaker of the day, Mr. Yuri Misnik. Mr. Yuri is the Group Chief Technology Officer at FAB. He has a responsibility for driving the group's technology and transformation strategy to ensure that FAB is ready for the next generation digital banking services. Yuri has 21 years of experience in technology at HSBC, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and the National Australia Bank, having worked in London, Melbourne, Singapore, and now the UAE. Before joining FAB, he served as the Executive General Manager for the National Australia Bank, one of the Australia's leading bank. NAB is currently the 21st largest bank in the world, as measured by market capitalization, with 1,590 branches and service centers across Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. Mr. Yuri holds a master's degree in applied mechanics from St. Petersburg's State Polytechnical University, Russia. Please join me to welcome Mr. Yuri on the board. Over to you, Mr. Yuri.
Thank you very much. And can you see my slides in a meaningful way?
Yes, can see.
Okay, great. So look, thank you very much for having me here. I think it's great, and it will be very hard to match the passion of a previous session, but I'll try. And look, I have a lot of slides, but I want to talk about anything we want to talk about. And I have the question and answers window open to me and me. So please interact and please ask things as we talk about, because I will talk about different topics, and I'll talk about technology. I'll talk about how to make things relevant, and how actually Roy is asking a question about how can the company maximize and secure that their investments are relevant. We'll talk about exactly that. I don't want to go into specific technologies in terms of we can talk AI or facial recognition or machine learning or crypto. We can touch them if you're interested. We can definitely talk about bits and pieces. But I want to talk about some principles and some things which are shaping the way technology works in the current organizations, in the large organizations, and small organizations as well, and what it means to stay competitive. And also, I want to talk about things which are typically missed, things like culture and values, and some leadership principles, which typically we ignore, but in many cases they are one of the fundamental things behind the successes of these large, big technological leaders which you're seeing in the world. So I'll just go very quickly. First of all, simple thing: the move is moving fast, and there's a few pictures to show you what it actually means. One is, so this is the concert crowd in 2005, and this is a concert crowd in 2013. Like an interesting perspective on adoption on the devices and computers. This is an interesting statistics, and we look at it from the perspective of the pace of moving consumer adoption of technologies development. So this shows how much time did it take for particular technologies to reach 50 million users. And if you think about it, sort of 60 years for cars, 46 years for electricity, 22 years for television, 7 years for internet, 2 years for Twitter. And if we talk about Zoom, I think Zoom we'll say 6 months for Zoom, but it's probably more driven by the pandemic and the current situation. So think about it. There's currently somewhere in the world, people are working on technology which in 1 to 2 years will reach 50 million, 100 million consumers. That's how fast the world economy is. By the way, the opposite is equally true. Some of these technologies which we've seen before sort of shrinking at the same pace. So everything is very dynamic. And the most important thing which values at the moment in tech world and technology probably is supporting everything is speed. Is how fast you can build new things and how fast you can adjust. You can adjust to the changed consumer sentiment. You can adjust to a new economic situation. You can adjust to the new COVID pandemic. I don't know, political crisis. All of this stuff matters. And another interesting graph, and I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's actually been very, very, very visually published in the internet, and you can sort of go and look at it. It talks about what happens in a minute on the internet. And if you look at it, it's actually absolutely fascinating numbers. 180 million, 180 or 200 million emails sent, 694,000 hours watched of content on Netflix, $1 million spent online in a minute, 400,000 apps downloaded, 41 million messages sent on the messaging channel. And if you actually follow, there's a link there, and these guys are tracking this. This graph actually changes year over year. I don't think they've published 2020 numbers yet, but if you're curious, go and have a look. That shows you the volume of information which is moving across our lives. And speaking about the volume, we all talk about the big data. We all talk about these things about AI, ML, and I'm sure that some of your technology people are talking about that you need to do machine learning. If you don't do AI, artificial intelligence, you will be left behind. It's all based on data. So let's think a little bit more, and I want you to start thinking a bit more about the data. So what is data? Data is measured, as you probably very well know, in megabytes, gigabytes, petabytes. Petabytes is thousands of gigabytes. Then there is a wonderful thing called exabyte. And now people are counting zettabytes. All of them goes from 1,000, right? And if the graph on the left on the slide shows that how much data was actually produced by the mankind in the last sort of whatever, from 1950s to 2020s. And we are now in 2020, 2021. I don't think there's enough statistics there. We're talking about 40 zettabytes of data generated annually in the internet. That means everything which you do, everything which we do now on Zoom, everything which you do on Facebook, everything which you do on Twitter, WhatsApp, etc., it contributes to that. I just want to give you an example what 40 zettabytes mean. There was an analysis done by one of the scientists, and they talked about how much voice, so how many speaking words was produced by the whole mankind from the first human till today. So if you think about, if you take all our words, all the speech, etc., record it at a 16 bit per second rate, which is actually quite a high quality recording. And if you capture everything, pretty much all the speech in the world for the whole history of humankind, it accumulates to 42 zettabytes. So every year we produce more information now, and it's actually doubling every 2 years. So that means next year and next 2 years, like 2022, we'll produce 80 zettabytes. All right. What do we do with this data? How do we process this data? First of all, where do we store all this data? But the second thing is, how do we take the information from which is stored in this data and take some business insights of it? And if you think about digital, if you think about all this wonderful conversation around digital banking, retail, et cetera, a lot of this stuff is about going into the data which we produce, which we collect from the customers, from the perspective of, what do they do, where they walk, what they click, what they're interested in, what transactions they do, and try to create business insights out of this data. There's another interesting story around industrial revolutions, right? And the problem which we have here is that you see the scales here are actually logarithmic, almost logarithmic. So you see 100 years on the left side, 1800 to 1900, and then 1900 to 2000. And then the last sort of split of the time is very compressed. And realistically, you see that this waves of industrial revolutions is accelerating. So there was 100 years between the first and the second industrial revolution, from the mechanical production facilities with water and steam, then to electricity. There was another 100 years approximately from electricity to basics of IT systems. And now we had less than 50 years from the basic IT systems and sort of first programmable controllers and automated manufacturing into the cyber physical systems. So the degrees complexity, the amount of knowledge and the amount of innovation which comes up, it actually accelerates. So people say it's such a great thing to live in this time because everything happens much faster. We would experience much more on the technology front, on the innovation front, in our lifetimes compares what our parents did or what grandparents did in the whole lifetime. What does it mean in technology space? That means that all these wonderful things which you see on the slides, cyber, AI, Internet of Things, cloud computing, all of these things, it's not just the cool technologies, they fundamentally transform how you do business. And I'll give you some examples of how it applies to financial services. Majority of the banks now, private, like the top cream of the banks, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, they were usually serving the very, very top clientele personally, right? If you want to do a wealth management in Goldman Sachs, you need to have accumulated wealth above how many millions of dollars. They all introduced things called robo-advice, and they all introduced things called the robo-wealth, which means everyone with as little as $30,000 in his savings can come up and literally use Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan wealth advisory service, which allows you to invest and help, etc., etc. No humans involved, very low cost of service, but essentially they try to accumulate much more capital into this. If you think about artificial intelligence, and lots of people want to talk about it, but realistically, when you see most of it, you see most of it in the very simple things like facial recognition, voice recognition, and some of the sort of chatbots and sort of or voice bots. So right now, if you think about mass adoption AI, majority of it sits in a space where it either the recommendation engines, every time you shop somewhere, there is probably some sort of an algorithm behind the scene which shows you some images of products on the screens. That's AI. Well, it's not an AI, it's machine learning, but it's a broader scope of AI. Every time you do a facial recognition at the airport, when you go to the airport kiosk, not that frequent for the last year, that's a vision recognition system which allows you to match your face to a photo. And right now, for example, if you onboard into some of the, for example, if you go into the UAE Pass application on the mobile and try to enroll for UAE Pass, they will actually capture your image and they will match your image to the screen. It's all about artificial intelligence. Internet of Things is a wonderful idea. This is a point that every device, everything you own will become connected to the internet. Your kettle, your fridge, your washing machine. I'm not talking about your watches and glasses. Everything has been there already. We still have a big question in terms of how to secure it, how to make it work for us, and how to generate meaningful insights of it. And cloud computing is a massive thing. I know you've probably heard about the cloud one way or another. It's the biggest hype in the technology. It's been there for a while. This is all about having this access to the computing, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data processing power with the power of a credit card. If you've never touched it, I would strongly suggest you go type Amazon Web Services or go type Microsoft Azure, have a look, have a read. Because essentially what typically took ages for the big companies to do. So for example, I want to go and build a data center, I will procure servers, I will put some power in it, etc. Right now, I can have access to all this compute capacity with my credit card in about 15 minutes. So think about what it means for innovation. Think about what it means for people with ideas who want to go write some code, put it there and see how it works. That's one of the big things which was fueling the growth for the last decade. And also the point from the workforce, there's a huge amount of new demand for new profession. If you're thinking about your company and who you would hire in your company, or where would you like to invest, these are the basic sort of main technology professions, or main technology roles which you'd like to bring up. And so data and AI professionals, engineering, cloud computing, product development, product management is a massive thing which effectively is lacking in our region, unfortunately. This is the ability for people to define the product features, to work, to own products, and work with engineering to build this product. We talked about machine learning and data a bit, and a lot of people talking about will you actually, a lot of people are afraid of AI. A lot of people are afraid of losing the jobs to technology. Maybe that comes to the question: are people going to be dumber by the time technology picks up? And effectively, like what people are seeing, what we're seeing in banking for sure, is that the jobs are changing from being a very manually task-oriented jobs to a bit more, process and information-oriented jobs. That means, and realistically speaking, we could retrain people. We can retrain people very well. So we don't believe, and I personally don't believe that the people will lose jobs. I believe that people who are actually doing mechanical things, especially in the knowledge industry, in the white collar industry, right? I mean, engineering and manufacturing might be a little bit different conversation, but people who are doing white collar jobs, they would be focusing more on a higher valued tasks and less on a routine monotonic operations of, and there's actually a big question, what's going to happen with and how it will change the nature of accounting, because a lot of the things, simple things, are reconciliation, some analysis and sort of meaningful forecasting you can do without actually human beings there. So the big question is, how does data and AI will change the job and focus on the accounting and audit specialists, because anomaly detection is a very interesting field which can be done in computers right now. So how would your focus shift from doing something not that interesting to doing much more focusing on sort of information discovery and analysis? And also, if you think about how is it changing people and how is it changing who we're looking for. So I have to hire people, I have to hire engineers, I have to hire developers. And right now, if you compare it from like 10, 15, 20 years ago, the whole motivational force for developers, for engineers, for young generations to come in and work changed massively. People are much more comfortable now with the fluid gigs. The whole gigs economy, the whole Uber sort of Deliveroo type of thing work, where I come in, I do on gigs when I want, I drive taxi when I want, and I don't drive it, I just have a nap and it helps me. It also transforming across the whole economy. So people are much comfortable coming in and working for 1, 2, 3 years. And there's very few people who are focused on, say, I want to work with a company for my lifetime, especially if you're seeing it in a generation of like, 20 to 30 year olds, especially in technology. Obviously, the centralized workforce is interesting. This was the conversation in 2019. Now we're seeing it's actually happened in reality. And I'll give an example. In FIB, we haven't been back in the office totally as a bank, as a technology team for what, since February or March 2020. So for more than a year now. And our productivity hasn't changed. The pace of work hasn't changed. The amount of stuff we do hasn't changed. So this decentralized, and right now, realistically speaking, I don't care where my developers sit. I don't care my operations people sit. Some functions in banking are very specific for that, but it's happening, right now. Yeah, it's becoming much more, and also it means that I can have a very interesting labor arbitrage and hire the best talent, maybe at a little bit cheaper price somewhere in the world where this labor exists, and don't just only go to one place and have a place. Learning becomes a massive thing, especially in the people we're hiring. They all want to learn constantly. And one of the big things which FIB, for example, is doing in the last 2 years is creating culture and creating tools inside the bank to constantly bring this new information, new knowledge, new training courses into the bank estate, so people actually stay interested and motivated. And obviously, the last bit about technology augmenting the people's jobs. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in technology as well. And if you think about the productivity, how much you can produce, you would see that developer, an engineer who writes code 20 years ago. If you think about sort of statistics of Microsoft, if you write 20 lines of high quality code in a day, that was considered good. Right now, you're talking about not 20, but 200, 300, 1,000. Right? That's the increase in productivity, which is driven by the fact that the development languages are simpler, the ability to test for for errors. They do security checks, are much more advanced, and all this technology, which helps technologists to write code, is very, very different. Okay, I would pause for a second. I would look at the questions and maybe talk about some things while we have this on on the screen. So let me just. How an organization should manage technology landscape, different platforms for different services, and how to bring cost-effective technology landscape, almost everything. I will talk about in a moment, but the whole point which I want to make is technology in the last 10, 20, 30 years, I think about 90s till 2020s, was typically sitting around large monolithic systems. And we'll talk about it literally in about 10 minutes. And these monolithic systems are very hard to change. They're very hard to unbundle. And typically banking is notorious for that. Our core banking systems who actually process your transactions, are so big, are so ugly. They're very reliable, right? If you think about maybe mainframes or some of the big packages like SAP is a big monolithic system. They desperately tried to fix it in the last 15 years. They're still not there yet. So these big monolithic systems are super hard to change. Once you commit to them, you have to live with them for a long period of time. And there's a very, very interesting concept. It's called half-life of technology. If you think about nuclear physics, and there's a concept half-life of radioactive element, that means like what is an average period of time this whole isotope or element will be half radioactive. It's a very simple thing about technology. It used to be, we define how long is the useful life of technology. And if you buy something from IBM, for example, in 2000, you would have known that for somewhere around 7 to 10 years, you would be able to live with them more or less comfortably. If you go and invest in technology now, today, you need to be aware that in 2 years, there will be a better, cheaper, more effective, and more scalable technology on the market, almost guaranteed. So instead of buying these big monolithic applications, you need to buy sort of a large number of bricks which you can put together to deliver what you need to do. So think about sort of Lego blocks. So buy technology in Lego blocks and combine them together rather than buy one big concrete slab and try to see what you do with them after that. So the interesting thing about advancement of technology and how in the future people will be employed. It's actually an interesting question. I don't know. If I knew, I would probably be writing a big book about it. But I think that definitely, if you think about people who doing technology, engineers, people who I work with, again, this whole point of gigs and engagements and people who want to come in, do the task, achieve something, and then go do another task and achieve something else, that's becoming more and more prominent. So I actually think, I genuinely believe that in a highly knowledge economy, people will come up to do something interesting. And if you think about the millennials, if you think about the people and the kids who are currently getting into workforce, their attention span is reasonably short. It may be driven by the, I don't know, Netflix, internet, and all the other wonderful digital things which we do, but they're definitely they want to come in, they want to have sort of almost instant or semi-instant gratifications. No one wants to work on a 5-year-long project. Deliver something and move on within your organization, another organization. So if you are thinking about building the org, think about that, the fact that people typically prefer to have this gig mentality. So let me talk about a couple of other things, and I will go a bit faster here. So first of all, everyone talks about technology. Very few people talk about culture. And I hope you've heard about Peter Drucker, and I hope you've heard this phrase that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's super, super important, and it's absolutely 100% right, especially in the technology organizations. We'll talk about some interesting thing called Conway law in later, but effectively, and probably our region has a bit of a problem with that, because when you're creating the cultural fit for your organization, or creation of cultural framework for your organization, obviously, you need to think about being innovative. You need to think about being, brave, being robust, being agile, being fast, which means you'll make mistakes. It means we'll fail sometimes. And some countries and some cultures are more open to failure. If you think about the Valley, in the Valley, it's almost like a badge of honor. I created 5 startups and all 5 of them failed, but it's great. And I'm doing the 6th one and so on. And it's great. And people feel proud about it. I think what's happening in our culture is a little bit less straightforward. And sometimes we're very reserved. So everything we want to do, we want to succeed in that, right? That's why we're becoming a bit slower. We're becoming a bit less open to things which, you know, we potentially have unknowns and potentially kind of fail. And it's changing a lot. And I think there's a lot of things happening in the government and in the country to encourage this type of startup, fast-moving ecosystem. But it's still a problem. One big example is Netflix, and there's a lot of PowerPoint slides around it. Actually, you can find this online if you want to hold the whole deck about Netflix culture. These are the main principles which they believe made them successful. And there's a whole book about Netflix. I'll point it in 2 minutes, but make sure that you understand what these things means. And you don't have to have the same culture in your organization. If you're a CFO, you are actually a massive contributor to the culture. And some of these cultural elements will cost you money. So, for example, Netflix is very, very famous for paying on the top of the market, right? They're paying on the top of your personal market. They're not paying on the what's an average developer gets in the country. They're all paying on top of what you as a person can get on your market, which is actually quite expensive. But in return, they have huge engagement, high productivity, you know, massively talented workforce. There's another interesting point, speaking about sort of how people are going to get employed and it's actually super relevant for technology organizations. Hard work is not very relevant. What's relevant about what you accomplish and what you get. And I think this actually fits very nicely into our current thinking about the distributed workforce. That means actually, I want people to work wherever they are, how much they want, right? They want to work at night, they want to work in the morning, they want to work during the day, they want to work from Maldives, they want to work from the beach, but I want them to deliver absolutely brilliant results. And these phrases here on the slides, the bottom ones about B-level performance and A-level performance, right? They actually live by that. And I see more and more companies in the US thinking the same way. And it actually says, okay, if you're doing okay, you're doing a lot of effort, but not producing many results, they will actually say, thank you very much. Here's a wonderful package. Please, we would like you to go work somewhere else. And people typically are okay with that. But on the other side, if you deliver outstanding results, it doesn't matter how much time you've spent, right? You spend 1 day or spend 1 week or 1 month. If you deliver brilliant results, we want you to work with us and we want to be there. It's a very interesting, controversial culture. I strongly recommend you to look at these 3 books. No Rules. It's actually about Netflix. The Everything Store and Amazon Unbound to the same author, Brad Stone, and he wrote, the first book is about the beginnings of Amazon. The last book has just been published. It's really, really amazing, and lots of interesting ideas coming to life there about the Amazon from maybe 2010 till 2020. And that's one thing. So they're all available sort of on Amazon. So it's like, I don't have any stock there, so I'm not getting any benefits out of that. But you have a look, very interesting books. Some of them a little bit hard to read, but strongly recommended. And if you think about sort of, let's focus on a couple of things here. And I know it's not a sexy technology, but I absolutely promise you that if you start thinking about that pieces, it will be as powerful or even more powerful than thinking about the best technology in the world. And values. What we've seen in banking is lots of companies, lots of banks, and the last 3 banks I've been working with, they've started thinking about the values, not just from the perspective, okay, it's an HR thing, which you publish on a page and we'll get through it, but values need to complement your technology choices, because you can have the best tech in the world, you can have the most modern tools in the world, but if your people don't demonstrate and don't live by the specific behavior, on the left you'll see Netflix values, on the right you'll see Amazon leadership principles, your wonderful technology stack will disappear or it will stagnate, right? And Fab, we have our own set of values. We try to model them actually of Amazon. We've spent a few months working on this, and they're all about, again, customer first, knowledge, enterprise, and collaboration. It's different language. We still sort of sometimes afraid to be bold with our language, but we use this language. And the most important thing is that you need to make sure that once you're working with organizations, these values matter. Because I've seen so many cases where they exist on paper in an HR portal and you never use them anywhere in the world. And when the performance comes up, it's all about how much revenue you brought up, how many customers you served, I don't know, how your balance sheet looks like. If you think about Amazon as an interesting example, they actually value your behaviors more than results in many places. So because I've seen examples where the salesperson was not making his quota, but he showed things like customer obsession every day. He showed ownership. He was thinking big. He was trying to do things happen, and he was rewarded more than his peer who was making his quota. And I'm talking about the sales example here, right? And we talked about performance. One other thing I want to leave you with this on the performance side is think about 10xers. And if you work with your technology colleagues, if you work with the Silicon Valley, if you ever met with Americans, everyone is obsessed about 10xers. I hope you heard about this. So it all came up from a very interesting place. In a procedural work, okay, if you have two people, two workers, one is average and one is absolutely top, the typical difference in output will be twice the between the first two, the average and the best. If you think about developer, if you think about creative person, an artist, I mean, hard to measure artists, but if you think about developer, data scientist, designer, product owner, etc., the same difference between average person, the best person, is 10 times more. And in many cases, when we hire for technology talent, when we think about our balance sheet, when you think about your cost, you think, oh, okay, like this is my brackets for an engineer. It has to make from, I don't know, 20,000 to 30,000 dirhams. And then somebody comes up who is absolutely brilliant, who is still an engineer, but who is best in his field, and he's saying, I want 50,000, not 20 or not 30, right? And people are typically, actually, you get these questions from CFOs like, why are we paying so much? How expensive it is, right? But on the other side, if you're hiring a really 10xer, right, 2-3 times the salary paid for this person will much more value compared to what he's actually going to produce on the other side. So the whole technology world is just now living in this obsession with 10xers and trying to find this 10xers and hire and attract them and keep them, because they're also very, very precious commodities. I'll pause here. I think any other questions which you want to talk about? So it's an interesting question from Bimal. So does the massive technological advancements create social disparity, particularly since smarter people will get equipped first? I don't think so. I actually don't think that being smart or not smart is the decisive factor. I actually think one of the most important things, and what we're looking for in people when we hire, and I know what Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Facebook are looking for people who hire, it's not being smart. Smart is great, but they're looking for people who are actually eager to learn, who are open to new ideas, who are passionate for driving things and making things happen, who have an open mindset. And some of this leadership principle, which we talked before, that probably fits in. This is equally important, maybe sometimes even more important than being smart. So, and I think that right now, the most important thing is that the knowledge is available. Knowledge is all there. Technology knowledge, data knowledge, financial. You can go and learn everything online. If we're thinking about 20 years ago, I actually think that's where the problem was, because if you don't get in the top university, if you're not going to get admitted, then you're not going to have the right education. You're not going to have access to the right professors. That means you need to be smart to get in the uni, or lucky, right, or both. And then only that guarantees you success. Right now, you can have access to exactly the same MIT, Harvard, Stanford lectures as anyone else, because a lot of them are online. Most of them are online. And it's actually getting more and more. Open University exists, Coursera exists. You can get all the knowledge you want. So I think there's absolutely no disparity there. I think it's now it's much more social, and it's much more open to everyone. Okay. So now let me talk about, and I'll probably spend another 20 minutes, and then so that we can ask questions if we want to. I know there's no break. I'm sorry for that, but I think it's easier to talk, and you guys can come in there. So first of all, the most interesting thing about ability to compete, technology, etc. And this is getting a bit more deeper, right? So first of all, when you talk to developers, when you talk to engineers, when you talk to the technology world, the most important thing for them and for you should be how fast I can take this piece of code, which I write, to production. Because it doesn't matter how much money you spend on all these developers, on all these, smart designers, people. If customers are not using it, you're not getting value from it. So there's a very, very simple metric, which actually people track, is how many releases of code do you do? And you can do it once a day, you can do it once a month, once a week, once a second. It's a very simple example. Banks typically operate at this left scale of this table. So banks release code if you're really, really good, if you're doing a really good digital banking application, you can release once a day, maybe once a week. If you're doing once a week, you're already in a good place. And many places, many things there, it's not because I'm lazy, it's more because I have to deal with security, I have to deal with a lot of controls, I have to deal with a lot of regulations, I have to deal with a lot of security again, etc., etc. Plus my systems are ugly, big, monolithic, etc., etc. In 2015, Amazon was releasing 6 changes, I think 6 changes a second in the enterprise. So companies who are on the forefront of innovation, they push code to production. Well, and actually this graph is about 5 years old, so I don't actually know it for now. They push code to production either once a minute, once a second, or actually many, many times a second. And that's a wonderful metric. And by itself, it doesn't say anything, but it also, the only thing it shows you that how fast you can move, how fast you can react. Because if I can only release something once a quarter, and by the way, trust me, there are banks in UAE who do production releases once every month or once every quarter. If I do it once a month, I have 12 chances a year to do something great for my customers. If I do it once a minute, I have 60 opportunities an hour to give something great to my customer. Of course, I need to do it reliable, meaningful, etc., etc. So what's happening in banks right now? Banks want to be like Amazon. They want to be like Netflix. They want to be like Airbnb. And this is by the way, not everyone is great from the beginning. This is as Airbnb was growing. This is how the number of deployments they had was growing. I think it was a weekly deployment. So look at this graph. Okay, and doesn't mean that you have to be great all the time, but it also measures, that's actually real data. So that's why you see it it's not a nice small thing, right? So 75,000 deployments a year, 75,000 times you have an opportunity to get something great to your customers, to change your technology, to make it more cost effective, to make it more productive. Okay, why banks are so hard to do it, and why we are, sometimes you see the same app there, and you complain about a bug, it never happens. A lot of the banking systems are what is called a monolithic, right? You think about this box, and everything that is in this box is part of the same application. A database, a front end, some business logic, and they're written in a weird way, etc., etc. And I know you might find some words here which you don't necessarily what they are, like load balancer, cache. It doesn't matter. Like it's pretty much one monolith. Okay. And that's how systems were built. That's how the systems were built in 2000. That's how systems were built 2005, 2010, etc. Let me just go forward. And when has become a problem? When you have a small application, being monolith is okay. And by the way, this graph shows in a typical banking application how many lines of code you have, right? And you see the growth. And when you're working with application which has 1,000, 10,000, even 100,000 lines of code, you're actually okay. You can deal with this. You have enough people who understand how it works. When you talk about applications having 3-4 million lines of code, right? Super hard to change. It's super prone to errors. And if you're deploying them, once a month, and it actually your core banking system, and it has 10 million lines of code or 100 million line of code, you want to actually be sure you're doing it right. And you have so much more time testing, regression testing, integration testing, and do all the other stuff. So you don't actually have time to do anything great for customers. If you think about the typical banking application, like classic banking application, you spend 2 months developing it, and then you spend 2 months testing it overall, right? So the ratio between development and testing is almost 50-50, right? And the smaller the application you build, the more ratio towards development versus testing. The small application you can build in a week, test in a day, and then deploy. Right? That's a massive, massive problem for us. And a lot of financial services companies, not just financial services companies, a lot of companies who've been having their technology done in 2000 and before, they have these problems. This is a very interesting graph, and you know, I'll spend a little bit of time here. People, this is sort of evolution of technologies and evolution of vendors. Okay, and I'm actually happy to share it with, maybe you can get it by email. It's a very interesting thing. So it shows where a particular companies are sort of being created and being a star, right? So you see where different companies, vendors on the roadmap, the vendors, you see Oracle, TIBCO, like MuleSoft, and other bits and pieces, and how it will change. And you see where the different companies were created, like Flickr, Facebook, Google, etc., etc. So banks, and I wanted to show on this roadmap, the banks who haven't invested in any innovation, they're stuck with their technology landscape somewhere around 2000, 2005. Banks who did a little bit of work, and actually a lot of the banks in UAE had done a lot of work, they're stuck somewhere between 2008, 2010-ish in a scheme of things and the way how they do things. The banks who managed to move forward and push the envelope and do things innovative, they're sort of sitting somewhere around 2012, 2013, 2014 type of things. That's the thing. I can count probably a handful of banks. Most of them are recently created. Banks like Monzo, Revolut, they're companies which actually been just created 2, 3, 4 years ago, which actually are, you can tell them they're great, right? But to be completely honest, majority of the banks, even the most innovative banks, right, which been there for a while, they're probably stuck around 2015 on all this wonderful set of things. And we're desperately pushing to get to this right part of the slide, to get to the microservices, APIs, resilience, security, and we're struggling. It's hard. It's hard mostly because you have to take this, this classic example of this, massive ship, change its engine and turn it at the same time, keep it running and keep it from actually hitting the rocks. And at the same time, trying to actually put all these nice things on top of it to fit regulators and others. And I talked about microservices. That's sort of, you'll hear it a lot. If you ever talk to technologists, like now, you'll hear a lot of things about microservices. And it's all about sort of this concept of having, a single car being built by one person, which is very custom and everything is done for specifically, into a modern sort of integrated way, right? There's lots of subsystems, and if you're buying a car, most probably different parts of it, or actually absolutely sure it's a mass production car, different parts of it are produced by different vendors, and then you just bring them all together and it becomes a car. The engine is done in one place, wheels are done by somebody else, your seats are done by the third party, and then you connect it together. You have standardized processes, you have interfaces which fit, but different components fit into each other because you agreed between all your vendors how you're going to work together. Microservices it's pretty much the architectural pattern which everyone is following right now. That's how you stay current. That's how you actually become more nimble. That's how you can actually protect from unknowns on the future. You build small components. All right. And essentially, that's the application built out of small independent processes communicating with each other through APIs. You all probably heard about APIs as well, and this is where APIs come in place. APIs is a contract between two software components. It's a common language which they talk. And if you are a good citizen, you all speak English. That means all your software components will speak English, so you can actually make them talk to each other. And effectively, the benefits of this smaller bit, coming to some questions that you guys asked about, is that the smaller the systems are, the less they couple together. The less they couple together, the better they scale. The less dependencies you have, the faster you innovate. That's how technology currently thinks. That's how, and when you're going to be approving budgets for technology companies or technology innovation, think about and maybe ask the questions about how loosely coupled this system is. How many components does it have? How connected these components are to each other? And effectively, when you build this ecosystem, it becomes of hundreds of thousands of different services working together to deliver a service. The most important thing that each one of them can be changed independently. So if you're building a shopping cart, a website for retail, right? You have the a shopping cart, you have your catalog, and you have some advertising bits. if all of them are independent of each other, you can change each one of them. You can always modernize things which are getting better. You can make cost effectiveness better, and you can run it in a fast iteration. So I'll stop right now, and I know it's some of these topics might be a bit more technical, some of this not, but any questions, guys? Why don't you sort of type in and write something? Maybe that's actually, while you are considering doing it, maybe it's an interesting topic to talk about digital banking and crypto and all the other interesting things. I don't have any slides about digital banking because I can show you lots of pictures. But there are a few things which is happening right now in financial services. And effectively, financial services are probably the last industry which hasn't been massively disrupted. If you think about retail, it was changed by internet, it was changed by Amazon in a big way. If you think about hospitality, Airbnb completely sort of flipped the whole model on its head. If you think about transportation, Uber as an example. But if you think about banking, we've been actually doing the same thing for hundreds of years. We've been doing accounts for hundreds of years. We've been doing credit for hundreds of years. We've been doing credit cards for like 30 years. We've been doing savings account for I don't know how many years. I mean, I could probably dig for it. But if you think about what the modern customers want, and if you just forget all these fundamental principles of banks, why are we talking customers about an account? Why do I have, with the same bank, why do I have a savings account and checking account and current account and a credit card? As a consumer, I don't care about this. All that I care is that I have some assets with this bank and the bank is prepared to give me some credit. And I want to be able, when I go shopping, to securely pay for goods. And ideally, trust my bank to maximize benefits for me based on the money which I give my bank. The concept of accounts, the concept of credit cards was created by banking industry a while ago because it's very convenient. It's easier for accounting. All our system works. It's easy to create in general ledger. So if you think about the digital banking, and by the way, no one has done it yet, and maybe one of you will do it, which will be amazing, or mine will be a part of the company who will do it, is how do you change the perception and how do you change the model of banking so it will be different from what we do today? And yes, we can talk about the fact that people are using mobile apps for doing everything. People are using, virtual credit cards on a phone, but effectively it's the same thing. You still have this credit card. You still operate the same way. So it's definitely a very interesting question to think on the digital. And crypto, another point of crypto, which I promised I'll talk a bit more about. There's two things. One is cryptocurrency, which is blockchain and all these wonderful things which you say. And I can't comment on them because generally I don't know what drives them. I don't understand them enough. And sometimes for me, it feels like a very, very artificial construct, but let's keep it aside. Most interesting things are actually digital currencies. The currencies which are I'm going to finish probably in 5 minutes, and then we can see how we're going. The currencies which are driven by central banks, and so right now you have Central Bank of UAE, you have Central Bank of China, you have some few other Arab banks who are doing digital currencies, and that's more interesting because they represent this tokenization service, which allows you to do much faster exchanges between different countries, and it sort of normalizes some of the settlement processes. So I do believe in digital currencies. I don't know what's going to happen with cryptocurrencies. But on the other side, if you think about blockchain, which runs all of it and drives all of it, blockchain is a wonderful technology. It's a bit old right now, and it's a bit ineffective, to be completely honest. It maxed out in a classic sense of like 5-6 transactions per second. So you won't be able to run MasterCard and Visa or SWIFT on blockchain. But as a concept of distributed trust, as a concept of distributed protocol of doing work, as a concept of having an ecosystem where without a central database, that's a brilliant idea. So I do think that the blockchain will pop up, and the blockchain technologies and blockchain-like technologies will definitely drive and grow. But I think it will be in a slightly different shape and form that we have it today. And by the way, in banking, to be completely honest, right now, if anyone talks about blockchain, the question is, okay, there's no problem which fits it. Almost every problem in banking I can solve without it. Not because the technology, not because the concept is bad, but I think that the implementation of it is quite ugly. So we've seen the first things happening in trade finance this year in UAE, where you have the first sort of trade finance chain where you can do invoice financing happening, which is really interesting. We'll see how it evolves, but I think the concept is great. We'll see how the technology evolves after that. I want to stop now and actually ask a question to the moderators: is that, do you like guys for me to continue, or do you want to see if any questions comes up, or maybe everyone is asleep?
We have any questions further? Say, Shafiq, anything is there?
We don't have any other questions.
Yeah, so we can move to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Yuri. It was a very informative talk, and thanks for introducing Zettabyte. But we are still in
I can give you
age.
more. I can give you more. There's the yottabyte, which is 1,000 zettabytes. So, and I think it's already being counted somewhere. So, if you want to Google it, you'll find it very interesting.
I think we will go step by step. We'll go with zettabyte first. The next meeting.
You can invite me to the next meeting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And just one question I would like to ask regarding the facial recognition we have in phones, or the fingerprints. Is it not really a security issues, like somebody could forge your bank account, or anything could happen? What's your thought on that?
It's a good question. I mean, first of all, if you look at the mobile apps, first of all, it's very rarely linked just to one single factor. So right now, and this is an interesting conversation about security and banking. If you think about most of the apps today, they live and work through some of these devices, like fingerprint or facial, plus and text box. Like you get an SMS, right? If you were doing something, if you're doing something not very common, like adding a new beneficiary, you'll get a text, you'll have to enter one-time password, all the other things. So having sort of the single factor of facial or fingerprint is it's not just secure, because theoretically fingerprint, for example, on your iPhone is not linked to you, it's linked to a phone. That means you can have your wife enrolled into fingerprint, and she can sort of use her finger to authenticate. So there's not a clear authentication mechanism. So what's happening now, and if you'll see, actually, we're going to roll this out in another 2 months in Fab, is the way we authenticate customer. You will not see it, but effectively behind the scene on an application, it captures the way you behave with your phone. It captures your gesture, it captures the way you type, it captures the way you hold it, the way your hand shakes when you hold it, etc. And combination of these factors together with your face or together with your fingerprint is much more secure way to authenticate you. So because even the way you swipe when you close, open things is unique to you. So if we take that factor plus the location plus the the version of the phone which you're using plus your fingerprint, etc., in combination, this data provides a very secure, authenticated way to do it. And when you do facial, I mean, the facial on your iPhones or your Android devices is actually quite basic. It's pretty much a static image of your face, which is captured and stored on the phone. The way we're enrolling customers right now through facial recognition is much more complex. So, for example, there's a few initiatives right now to be able to hook into the Ministry of Interior database in UAE, and they capture your live image, the way you move, and they compare it with a large database of images which they have from you, from your entry into the country, from your street cameras, etc. And they can very securely authenticate and say, this is you, this is not you, right? And other bits and pieces. So it's evolving very fast, but I think it's sort of definitely getting more secure.
Thank you. And do you think that this is going to be mandatory? Will be made mandatory by all the governments in the future, or? making a
what's
mandatory to keep
the facial
face and fingerprint. Yeah.
Look, the governments probably want the whole ecosystem of facial recognition cameras. If you think about China, if you think about UK, it all existed, right? So UK, in London, for example, is very famous for there's not a single place where you're not captured by 2 or 3 cameras. I think what's happening now is not that. What's happening now is that the algorithms behind this are becoming very, very powerful to continuously trace and recognize you, regardless of the quality of the image and regardless of the position where you are. And there was an interesting test in China done on one of Beijing train station, where they managed to recognize every single person on this train station walking, not from the facial, but from the way they walk. So the algorithms are now seeing people and capturing their posture, capturing their physical and actually uniquely identifying them. So I think whether it's become mandatory or not, I think the governments and security forces will definitely be using it more and more because it's available and it's there and it allows you to create much safer environment for the citizens. For the banking and for the financial transactions, we definitely seeing that it's becoming like a norm. I don't think it's mandated, but more a norm, which everyone will have to follow if you want to be competitive in this space.
Thank you once again. And as a token of appreciation, we are please accept our certificate, and
thank you very much.
Email to you later.
Thank you.
And I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Abdul Khader Obaid Ali, Chairman of the Board of UAE Internal Auditors Association, for accepting a speaker for today's evening. Mr. Ali spoke on disruptive technology, the way forward. We thank you, sir, for being with us today. I also thank Ms. Yasmin from IAA for coordinating this event. Every year we had a joint event with IAA, and always Yasmin is the contact point since beginning. And Ms. Yasmin, thank you for everything. And I think we will continue this journey. And in fact, we need to increase the frequency of one event to more than one event.
Yes, it's always our pleasure, honestly, and we missed having our events together, but we started with this, and I think we will start continuous with this and physical. We are looking forward to meet all of you with a physical event for the upcoming times, inshallah.
Absolutely, and we are waiting for to see the physical event starts. And again, I'd like to thank Ms. Samia Al-Yusuf from IAA for introducing the speaker. Thank you, Ms. Samia.
Thank you.
I also thank our committee members for making this webinar successful. I also like to thank our sponsors. And I express my gratitude to all the participants today from ICA and IAA. Thank you very much for joining with us. And before we conclude, we have 3 exciting prizes for engaging audience. I would like to announce 3 names. The winners are CA Azim Maniar, CA Bimal Krishna, and Mr. Roy Kanania. Congratulations to all winners. Congratulations. You can contact CA Mohammad Shafiq, our PDC leader, for claiming the prize. Thank you for being with us this evening. I hope it was a great learning for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yasmin, again.
Everyone. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.